the return, as many like to call it. And that's just showing how heavy these downpours are, moving just along the pike, south of Worcester, right on through Connecticut. That is a hot spot right now. So with this severe thunderstorm warning, you can see that the area of concern does stretch out of northeastern portions of Connecticut into southern Worcester County. The towns that are included include Southbridge, Oxford, Auburn, Northbridge, Uxbridge. These areas are currently under the severe thunderstorm warning. Now, the severe thunderstorm warning is in effect until 10:15. The main concern is the potential for wind gusts near 60 miles per hour. So with that kind of wind gust, you need to make sure that you are in the interior of your home. Get away from windows. That is straight line wind potential. So that means that windows will likely be damaged, and we could see trees coming down, power lines. It is important to be indoors, and if you can, get into an interior room where there aren't any windows. In addition, we also had the tornado warning. That is the red box on your screen. I'm going to zoom in so you can see that a little bit closer, extending right from Webster, moving in an east-northeast direction. The towns included in the tornado warning, this is an area where if you're within the highlighted red section, you need to take shelter. If you have a basement, go into a basement. If you are not in an area or a structure that is strong, make sure you get to a structure that is strong, because this is where we're seeing the likelihood of tornado. It is imminent. So right now, the towns included Webster, Douglas, moving out toward Northbridge, Uxbridge. That is where the tornado warning is currently in effect. Now, we're seeing with this, the system is holding onto its strength. It's sustaining itself. It is not losing its strength. So even if you're sitting just east of the Northbridge area, I would still take shelter, because this is holding on to itself as it's shifting eastward. This tornado warning in effect until 10:45. Oh, and just as I'm looking at it, a new tornado warning has been issued. So the National Weather Service is still seeing strong indication of rotation as the system continues to shift east. And now this is a very large area that's under a tornado warning. This is rather extensive. So let me zoom out. You can see the new tornado warning now extends northward into the Westboro area. And that includes some areas of Westboro, Northbridge, moving out along much of 90, the Mass Pike included in this new tornado warning. So this particular tornado warning is in effect right now, and it remains in effect until 10:45. This is another area of concern. So in addition to the first tornado warning, or I should say the second, tornado warning that's in effect down to the southern portions of Worcester County, we now have a new tornado warning that's extending onto the Mass Pike, and that one is in effect until 10:45. So there's a lot to watch. Bottom line, if you're within the red triangled areas, that's where you need to take shelter. We are now seeing indication on the radar of rotation. So mobile homes will be damaged and susceptible to the likelihood of this rotation. Damage to roofs, windows, vehicles, looking likely. I want to take a zoom in on our velocity. This is indicating where we're seeing that chance of rotation. And it is very clear here. Now, this is a very strong indication of rotation right now. So the velocity showing the wind coming toward and away from the radar, the green coming toward, the red going away, and you can see it's very close to each other as you move just south and east of Oxford. So that area is where there's a strong indication of rotation right now. So that is why the National Weather Service is issuing these new tornado warnings, extending the area, because it's all a matter of monitoring this rotation and seeing where it goes. So if you're within a tornado warned area, you need to take shelter. In the severe thunderstorm warning area, you also need to be weather aware, because even within this yellow box, we are seeing wind gust potential near 60 miles per hour. So there's a lot to monitor right now. If we could possibly take a look at the Worcester cam, I know that in the Worcester area, things are getting very dark right now, and there it is. So there's not much to see, unfortunately, but very heavy rain is pushing through, and things are really starting to deteriorate in the Worcester area. Katie and Todd.
All right, Kellyanne,
Okay, Kellyanne,
thank
you very much. And as Kellyanne has been pointing out, the situation is deteriorating. So if there's one message that we can get across, and we can't emphasize it enough, it's to take these warnings seriously. And as proof of the deterioration, we're talking about not only extending the warning, extending the window for this tornado warning, but also extending the geographical area.
Correct. This new warning is heading for the Mass Pike, close to, almost the Framingham area. So especially if you know somebody that's out on the roads right now, you definitely want to give them a call. Being under an underpass is not a safe place to be during a tornado. If you are in a car, you want to tell that person to just get off the road. If they have to park the car, keep their seatbelt on off the lanes, out of the way of other cars. And also, if you're inside of a home with a basement in that area, you want to get in the basement right now. If you do not have a basement, you want to go to the lowest floor. Big tip here, avoid windows, because we've got those 60-mile-an-hour winds. It's going to be damaging, and you don't want to be in the way of any debris as well.
And Katie, you made a really good point about the highways, because when Kellyanne showed us that map, it encompasses, if I counted correctly, 3 major highways, because we're talking about the Pike, we're talking about part of 290, and we're talking about part of 495. So this is something we definitely want to keep an eye on. And Kellyanne, we just want to recap some of the towns that she mentioned in terms of the tornado warning. We're talking about Worcester County. We're talking about Webster, Douglas, Uxbridge, Northbridge. If you're in those towns, take shelter. Don't wait, take shelter.
Yeah, and this is something that originally we had the warning going until 10:15. The National Weather Service has extended that to 10:45, and then they have now issued a new tornado warning. It's a little bit north of that area, extending further towards the Mass Pike. A lot of people in the path of this rotation. Now, again, Kellyanne mentioned we have not at this point heard any reports of anything on the ground, but radar is indicating rotation. At the very least, that means a very severe storm is moving through that area, producing some damaging winds, hail, and heavy down. You can see that extending right into Framingham and the Mass Pike. Todd mentioned it a moment ago. This affects a number of roadways, especially highways. Do not think that an overpass is a safe spot to be if you see a strong storm coming your way. If you can't get off the road and to a shelter, maybe a store or something nearby, you want to pull over to the side, keep your seatbelt on, put your head down, and remain inside of your car if you have to.
And of course, if you don't have to go out, it goes without saying, or should go without saying, don't venture out at this point in time. Take the action, take the action that we were just talking about in terms of seeking shelter, and avoid traveling. Try to postpone that for later in the day if you possibly can.
Kellyanne, these updates are coming in pretty regularly. When will we know, I guess, the next update as far as any new warnings or extending this current tornado warning?
So it seems like at this point, the National Weather Service continues to extend the area and the timing of these tornado warnings. So unfortunately, at this point, we're not seeing any signs of weakening. It is holding on to its strength, this system, it's sustaining itself. So unfortunately, this will likely continue to progress as the system pushes eastward. So really, through the next few hours, everyone needs to be weather aware, especially moving from 495 eastward, where this storm is now progressing. I do want to mention, though, as I'm checking Twitter, there is a mention here of structural damage report in the Webster, Mass area, awaiting confirmation, but there's also potential trees and power lines down in the Main Street, Chase Ave, Pleasant Street area. So that is right, the Webster area is right where we saw the rotation on the radar. So that would make a lot of sense for us to see the damage reports coming out of the Webster area. That is where we saw velocity indication, or excuse me, radar indication on our velocity data of rotation. So of course, nothing being reported or confirmed on the ground, but we are seeing that indication on the radar. Here's a look at the live radar right now, and I'm going to focus in on the main area of concern, and that's as we move into southeastern portions of Worcester County, really southern Worcester County in its entirety needs to be on alert right now. We have 2 tornado warnings that are in effect. One that goes into effect until 10:45 in far southern Worcester County, and then we have a tornado warning that extends north and eastward, pushing right onto the Mass Pike, pushing out toward the Metro West area, right into Framingham. So 2 tornado warned areas. As I take a closer zoom in, one tornado warning extending right out of Webster Another extending right out of Oxford. And this is an area where we're seeing the indication of very strong wind, but also that rotation as well. It's progressing rather slowly, but still something to monitor, of course, at moving east at about 20 miles per hour. So that is why, based on that track, we are seeing these areas of concern. So again, it includes Webster, Uxbridge, Grafton, moving out toward Marlborough. We're also seeing that indication of rotation moving toward your area. This is a live look beside me here of Worcester, and you can see, thanks to the College of the Holy Cross, a very dark and really eerie conditions right now. If you're in the Worcester area, you need to take shelter, as we are seeing those conditions deteriorating quickly with very dark skies and very heavy downpours pushing through. So Worcester, unfortunately, this is definitely a big concern right now, as we are seeing these conditions, especially right now moving south and east of Worcester. That's where the tornado warned area is. Although I will say, if you're in Worcester, I would take shelter. I would move to an interior portion of your home, because even outside of the tornado warned area, we're seeing indications of very strong wind. So I want to take you in on this radar here so we can take a closer look at just how strong these storms are. And moving right into the Grafton area, you can see this bright red indicating the heaviest of these downpours that are pushing through. And as Todd mentioned earlier, this is a really great point. This is going to impact major roadways and major areas of travel right now. So we're seeing these dark and very low visibility areas pushing through along 90, 495, and even as you make your way along 395, even portions of Route 20, we're seeing those conditions really starting to worsen rather quickly. We are also seeing that indication of rotation, which of course is the reason why the National Weather Service has issued these tornado warnings, and unfortunately is still an area of rotation here on our radar. So this is the velocity data, which is indicating wind going toward and away from the radar. And because we're seeing that red indicating wind going away and green wind going toward the radar, so close to each other, just east of Oxford, just west of Northbridge, you can see it right there. I'm going to take a little highlighter here and highlight just exactly what we're looking at, just near Sutton, in fact. That's where we're seeing some indication of rotation. So that is why we are seeing those tornado warnings in effect. And what I want to do is zoom out to show you just exactly the track that this is following. So it's moving east at about 20 miles per hour. So if I get my tracker here and follow that track, that means for areas through Metro West, places like Framingham, even moving out toward Needham, you need to be weather aware, as this is going to be making its way toward your town as we approach just about 11:15 for the Framingham area, Needham toward 11:30 to 11:45. Now these are estimates, so you need to allow for extra time. Know that this system is moving toward your area and it is strong. We are no longer seeing the severe thunderstorm warning in effect, which of course is good news, but we still have these tornado warnings in effect. And in particular, you can see how we're starting to see a little bit of notchiness to the radar. So that's indicating where we're seeing some indication of rotation and also very strong wind that's pushing through. So lots of concerns right now. I'm going to check to see the latest and of course keep you guys updated. But Katie and Todd, I know you guys are doing the same.
Yeah, Kellyanne, we're actually looking on Twitter. We're getting a lot of reports right now of some damage in the town of Webster. You mentioned earlier one of those storms, one of those paths is moving right out of Webster. So we know there's significant damage on the ground in Webster. We have a crew on the way right now, but that just shows you how strong this storm is. It's already created damage in the town of Webster. It is likely to produce damage across the path that it's moving and those towns in that area. So you want to make sure that you get inside, take shelter, get in a basement. If you don't have a basement, get on the lowest floor of the home and be sure to stay far away from windows. We're talking about trees down, power lines down, even building damage that we're reading right now. Preliminary reports are suggesting. We're getting some pictures too. We don't suggest that if you're in that area, you put yourself at any risk to take those pictures. We do have a crew on the way. We'll be able to take a better look at what has happened so far in that area. But this really shows you, I mean, first it was Worcester County. We then moved into Middlesex County. Now it's extending as far as Needham. right where our studios are. So this is there are a lot of people in the path of these storms and major impact on this Saturday morning.
So just to recap, if you're just tuning in, you can see the banner at the bottom of your screen. We're talking about tornado warnings in 2 of our most populous counties, Worcester County and now Middlesex County. These are in effect until 10:45. And we really started picking up on this around 9:45 or so. So we're talking about an hour of tornado warnings in one form or another. They have extended in terms of not only the duration but also the geographical area. So we want to pay attention to this.
Kellyanne said that it's moving only really at 20 miles an hour, and it does not seem to be showing any signs of weakening right now. So you can assume that those tornado warnings will be extended past 10:45. I mean, we're coming up on 10:22 right now, and also that we could see more tornado warnings issued. But for right now, Middlesex County and Worcester County, you are under a tornado warning. You need to take shelter at this very time.
And we can't reiterate that enough, the importance of heeding these warnings. Take shelter. That means don't go out on the road. And when we look at the radar there and we can see the tornado boxes for the danger zones, that encompasses a number of major highways. We've been talking about this. And so there's obviously the potential for, catastrophe. So we need to take these things seriously. Kellyanne's been talking about the fact that we're seeing very strong winds, downpour as well. When we looked at the Worcester camera a short time ago, visibility was pretty much zero. So you wouldn't want to be on the road for that reason as well.
But if you do know somebody that is traveling along the Mass Pike right now, give them a call. They're probably, hopefully, listening to the radio, getting the same information, but they do not want to park under an underpass. You might think that's your first, instinct as where to take shelter. That's not where you want to go. If you cannot get off the road and into somewhere that is safe and enclosed space, you want to pull off to the side. Keep your seatbelt on, put your head down, and stay in your vehicle. But certainly, underpasses are not safe right now. So if you know somebody that is traveling right now, give them a call. Let them know that they could be in some very imminent danger. And we're talking winds of up to 60 miles an hour. So, even if we're not seeing rotation on the ground, we're seeing very strong winds, very capable of taking down trees and power lines and causing significant damage to structures as well.
And that's another reason why you don't want to be on the road, is because of those strong winds, not only what they can do to your car, but what they can do to other potential debris, whether that's trees or something else, street signs, that kind of thing that can be blown into your car. So we can't stress enough the importance of taking these warnings seriously. Tornadoes are not something we have to deal with a lot around here, but we've had numerous warnings. We had warnings yesterday, earlier in the summer as well, several years ago. We did have touchdowns, and they were fatal. And we just want to make sure that people take this seriously. Kellyanne
was talking about it all morning long here on the Eye Opener, that we've had this humidity. It's been sitting for several days now, and really the conditions are ripe. It's been brewing for this type of severe weather storm. This is the same system that we saw bringing flooding all along the East Coast down in Virginia. So we know associated with this are some very heavy rains that will make visibility very difficult as well. So even if you cannot see in front of you, you don't know, there's probably very strong winds, perhaps debris. Do not leave your home. Do not leave your car. Get somewhere safe. If you're in a structure, a high rise, maybe a hospital that doesn't have a basement, you want to go to the center of that building on the lowest floor, away from windows, an enclosed area. So if you do have a basement, get in that. Mobile homes, you want to just, get out if you can, if there's time, go to a neighbor's home, a basement, something like that. Those will see some significant damage from a storm like this as well. Tornado warning has been issued in Worcester County and Middlesex County right now until 10:45 a.m.
All right, so I know Kellyanne Chicalise is with us once again. She has been with us all morning and is going to be with us for the duration of this. Kellyanne, I want to go back to you to see what additional information you have. I know you're trying to get the latest information on these tornadoes. What do you have?
Well, at this point, a lot of the indication of rotation is all based on radar data, nothing that's been spotted at the ground. So at this point, it's all a matter of trying to get some of those reports in and trying to see where we're seeing some ground truth to some of this rotation that's being picked up on the radar. And we did get a report in. This is out of Dudley. This is thanks to a viewer, Jonathan. He did indicate that the roof was starting to shake, and so was his home as that storm was pushing through. So we are seeing some very strong reports. Right now, that I want to bring in meteorologist Mike Wonkum with a little bit of insight on what's going on right now. How are you doing, Mike?
Hi, good morning, Kellyanne.
Good morning.
Yeah, very interesting morning we have going on. And what's interesting, I look at this from a historical perspective. we typically think of tornadoes as happening during the afternoon, and this is another incident where we've had morning tornadoes. If you think back to the Revere tornado, and you think about the Concord tornado, even last week when we had those tornadoes out there towards Douglas, those were actually happening during the morning. So it's an unusual situation, but looking at all this heat and humidity that we have around, that something has to give in this particular case. One of the things I found yesterday, because we had some tornado warnings, especially up into parts of New Hampshire, is a lot of people are not really familiar with what to do during a severe thunderstorm or a tornado. And of course, as you mentioned, head for the lowest layer of the house that you can. A basement is the perfect place to be. You want to put yourself between the outside, as many walls as you can. If you don't have a basement, sometimes people will say a bathroom, an interior section, even into a bathtub if you're concerned about that. And certainly if you're in a car and you see the severe weather coming at you, you don't want to try to outrun it. You want to get out of the car and get into a low-lying ditch or something like that. So the idea is to protect yourself from that wind. If you've got a blanket, you want to put it over the top of your head, it's a good idea. Many people have finished basements, and it's just a good place to be spending the morning on a Saturday morning just to kind of get yourself out of the danger of what's happening there. So those are some of the things that we look at. It's interesting that this was the area that was really kind of in the same area that we saw just a week ago, and so many people are kind of in touch with what's going on. Those, of course, were EF1 tornado that touched down in Douglas and then worked its way up to the north, weakening a bit as it came through. But the winds can be ferocious out of these, and with all the heat and humidity that we have taking place, that this is an opportunity for the storms to develop. And not only just if you're in that, we're focusing right now on where the tornado warnings are, but you notice it's a very large area that we're talking about, and because it's such a large area, we can have these torrential downpours. It's a Saturday morning. People are headed off maybe to do some recreational activities with their kids, or maybe they're out going to do a little shopping or whatever they want to do, and they're not as in touch with the weather as perhaps Monday through Friday. So when you're going out, you make sure you tell people that this stuff is out there, and the whole system is tracking its way closer and closer to Boston the whole time. So a lot of people are headed toward the Cape. I know there's going to be a lot of traffic there. Eventually, later on today, Route 3 is going to be clogged up with traffic, and we get these heavy downpours coming through, even if it isn't tornado. The heavy rains are a big issue that we have there. And you've seen a lot of the areas where we've seen a lot of inflow and outflow very close together. That indicates to us that there's rotation. What that means is the radar is actually tracking raindrops. And as those raindrops, in fact, a good analogy of it is, if you've ever been picked up for speeding, you understand Doppler radar completely. What's happening is we're tracking those raindrops. And if we see a bunch of raindrops headed toward the radar and a bunch of those raindrops heading away from the radar, tends to be that when you have that, you have some rotation going inside there. What we're doing is, with Doppler radar, is we're picking it up inside the cloud. And then the question becomes is, how far down does it extend? It starts up in the middle parts of the clouds, then it kind of squeaks its way down, and that's what we're looking for, that rotation on the ground. Of course, once the rotation hits the ground, it's a tornado. So far, everything we've had has been based on just strictly what we've seen on radar, but it is something, a very good indicator of what's going on. And Kellyanne, I understand you've probably got the latest there of what's going on in terms of the warnings and also where that radar is tracking things right at this moment.
Yes, thank you so much for your insight, Mike. Yes, and we are seeing right now with the tornado warning, as you mentioned, a very expansive area that's included and under the tornado warning. So, of course, that is a huge concern because this does include very highly populated areas of our region as well. We also are seeing major roadways being impacted by this as well. So that's a concern. The Mass Pike, 495, and even as you're moving down along areas of 395 as well, we are seeing some of that damage pushing through. So here's a look right now, as we can see, onto the roadways, low visibility, very heavy rain in the Milford area. And this is where we're seeing very dark conditions. So that's a very strong indication of this system pushing through. So it's very unfortunate that this is moving through during a time frame where Mike had mentioned it's your Saturday morning drivers. And so they're not going to be quite as weather as where. We also have Framingham right now. This is a Mass Pike, and you can see the wetness of those roadways, very heavy rainfall pushing through. It's hard to see just how strong the wind is as it's pushing through with that system. However, very tough conditions traveling through the Framingham area right now. And it should mention that the Framingham area is just east of the tornado warned area right now. So you're not within the tornado warning, but you're very close. So if you're in Framingham, you do need to prepare to take shelter. I also want to mention that in addition to the tornado warning, we also have a flash flood warning that has been issued. There's a lot to keep up with this system, but I want to mention that because the flash flood warning does encompass a huge area right now. It extends pretty much from Franklin, moving up through Framingham, and it moves all the way up toward Acton. You can see it stretches out toward Leominster. So it's this area in green, that green box there on your screen. So that's where we're seeing, in addition to the strong wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, in addition to the rotation and a possible tornado, we also have flash flooding potential. So southeastern Worcester County, west central portions of Norfolk County, and also Middlesex County. That is where we're seeing the flash flood warning in effect until 12:30. And this is going to be an issue that lingers longer than the tornado potential. This is in effect until 12:30, this flash flood warning. So flash flooding continues to be a concern through the afternoon, and that is another thing to monitor. But of course, let's focus in on the tornado warning because that is of highest concern. And right now, it is a smaller area. You can see it has been shrunk down a bit, but still an area of concern as you stretch from the Grafton area, even Northbridge right now, pushing right up through Westboro and making your way toward Marlboro. So this tornado warning is in effect until 10:45. It is following a track right now. It looks like the progression is just slightly faster. It's up to about 30 miles per hour. So based on that track, I'm going to show you where we're going to see this likely move out toward. Now, this is not to say that the threat of tornado is going to stretch out this far, but it does look like as it follows this track, a very strong storm cell is likely to make its way into areas like Westboro as we approach 10:45, Marlboro approaching 11, Waltham as we approach 11:15 to 11:30. So that means 128 as we move between the 11 to 11:30 hour. That is when you're going to start to see those conditions start to worsen rather quickly as we're seeing very heavy downpours on the radar. And speaking of heavy radar, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that the difficulty with this storm, this is an unusual weather pattern or weather system, because if there were to be a tornado on the ground, it might be difficult to see because of these heavy downpours.
Yes, and that's a really great point because this is rain wrapped. So that means that you're going to have a hard time actually seeing the rotation. So a lot of times, a lot of people are reporting right now that they hear the strength of the storm moving in. It sounds loud. You can feel the shaking, but it's not something you might particularly see. So that's a really great point, Katie, is that it's not something that you look out your window. You might not see that, funnel cloud that, of course, we see portrayed in movies and in cinema, but it is something where you might just hear that strong wind picking up like a freight train, a lot of people call it. And that is, of course, an indication of rotation heading our way.
So that is why if you see your town or somebody you know inside of this red cone, you want to tell them, take shelter immediately. Get down in a basement, get to the lowest floor of your home, stay away from the windows. If somebody is on the roads, they want to avoid the overpass, get off the road, stay in your car with your seatbelt on. But also, even outside of this cone, we've got heavy downpours producing 1 to 2 inches of rain in an hour in some spots. So that is going to cause some localized flooding on the roads. Turn around, don't drown. That's the message we always say. Where you see this water building up, you just want to be safe today. We've got a lot going on this morning. Tornado warning in 2 counties, parts actually of Norfolk County as well right now until 10:45.
So life safety, of course, is the most important thing in situations like this and in any situation. But we also want to talk about some of the structural damage because we are getting reports from a number of towns, including Webster, Sutton, Grafton, and Millbury. Varying degrees of reports of structural damage. There had been some calls to fire departments for things like building collapses, roof collapses. So that's a major concern. And as you pointed out, visibility is not great. So we may not really get a full understanding of how extensive the damage is until after this is over.
Correct.
Kellyanne made an excellent point in terms of the various dangers that we have to deal with today. So there's the tornado warning that's in effect until 10:45. That's at least another 10 minutes, unless that's extended. So that's one issue. But then even beyond that, we have the high winds, we have the rain, and of course the flash flood warning. So that's another reason why you want to be very careful. And if you can delay travel, we definitely want to do that.
And we mentioned earlier that we have crews on the way to some of these areas. I believe our Josh Brogadier is standing by right now. Josh, what are you seeing?
Katie, right now we're on in Bellingham headed west. It's one of these back roads here. We just got off 495. I can tell you the most torrential rain that we saw was when we were in Rentham and the Bellingham area on 495. I mean, it was raining sheets, and some people are even pulling over to the side of the road. At this point, the rain has let up a little bit as the storm is moving through. And then we're headed actually west right now. We, of course, heard those damage reports in Webster, seen some of those pictures, so we're headed that way now off the road. I should say one thing about the traffic, which you don't normally expect at 10:30 on a Saturday morning. There are so many people on the roads right now, and it's not clear if they're just going somewhere on a normal Saturday or if it's somehow in response to this storm trying to get to a different place. Either way, a lot of people on these roads here, especially for this time of the day and this day of the week. But the rain has let up for right now. We'll see if it continues or if it picks up, and of course we'll check back with you in just a little bit.
All right, Josh, thank you very much. And just keying in on something that Josh said there, raining sheets on 495 in Bellingham. Obviously, visibility is not great, and that's one of the many reasons why we've been, telling people, if it's possible, delay your travel.
Yeah.
Josh saw, what he thought was an unusual amount of volume.
That's concerning.
And perhaps that is people self-evacuating. We don't know at this point.
We are getting a lot of pictures and videos in from specifically the town of Webster, and what I'm noticing is it's a lot more structural damage than trees and power lines down, so that definitely indicates some very strong winds that are going through that area. It looks like it's moved out of that area at this point, but now that they're getting a good look at downtown Webster, it looks like a lot of shingles are maybe some roofs ripped off of buildings and a lot of structural damage, so these winds are very significant, up to 60 miles an hour.
And Kellyanne, I know in situations like this, we don't really know that a tornado has touched down officially until after the fact. Am I correct in that? And that we need to have the National Weather Service come in and make the actual determination. So we don't know if the damage that we're seeing is from a tornado or perhaps just sort of collateral storm damage.
So what they'll do is they'll have a surveyor go out and confirm it was a tornado, and then also confirm the strength of this tornado, which is something that, of course, will be done after the fact based on the damage that they're seeing. But also we could get ground reports from people indicating that they are seeing a funnel. But as Katie mentioned, there's a lot of rainfall, very heavy rainfall. So even seeing the rotation or the funnel cloud that one would look for is going to be extremely difficult.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we do have some pictures from Webster that show some of the damage that we're talking about. This is Main Street in Webster, and there you can see it looks like there is some fairly extensive damage. We don't fully know how extensive it is.
We're seeing a lot of reports, though, of structural damage. We've got buildings that are not safe right now, shingles on the ground. You see some tree branches there. Also, there's some, looks like a little bit of residual flooding left on the roads. This is Main Street in Webster, sent to us on Facebook. Thank you to our viewer that sent that to us. Please do not go out of the way of safety to get any pictures for us, but we appreciate those of you that are getting out and looking at the damage as this storm moves through areas like Webster that saw it really at the beginning of this warning when it was issued.
And as we saw in those photos, there's a lot of debris on the ground. So that's another reason why you don't want to venture out if possible, because you have no idea what you might be driving onto or into. And in situations like when we're talking about flash flooding, and that's a concern. We can't undermine that. Flash flooding is a concern for much of the day today. You don't want to drive into floodwaters because you really don't know. Are there wires down? Is there some other debris that could be catastrophic? So this is a situation we can't stress enough. You want to take this seriously.
Yeah, and looking at that cone of where that area of impact is, that's a huge area stretching through, 2 portions of 3 counties there, going all the way as far as, into the noon hour right now. So this storm is moving at about 20 miles an hour. It does not seem to be weakening at this point. It's bringing along with it a lot of damage, and it includes a great amount of people that are in its path. Really big area here.
We have some new pictures of some of the damage. Actually, I believe it was live video. Looks like we might have lost that signal. That was in Hopedale. I wonder if we can go back to the safety warnings. Do we have that graphic? Just because we have another 5 minutes or so of this tornado warning that is in effect. So we want to make sure that our viewers know exactly what to do if you're in the danger zone. Yeah, listen carefully.
You want to go to the lowest level of the center of the house. You want to make sure that you are out of a car or a mobile home. Unless that storm is right over you, then you buckle your seatbelt and stay in. If you're outside, get to a ditch or a low spot and stay away from windows.
Absolutely. We can't stress that enough. We want to make sure you understand what to do in a situation like this. You can see on the left-hand side of your screen, that's a live picture. I believe this is from, I'm sorry, say again, Mendon?
Mendon.
Okay, this is a live picture from Mendon. And you can see the rain's still coming down at a pretty good clip there. We don't see a whole lot of damage there, but we had shown those pictures just a short time ago from, I believe, from Hopedale and from Webster,
right,
showing a lot of the damage. And that seems to be the thing that we're seeing the most at this point is structural damage. We have no report at this point of any serious injuries. So we're going to stay on top of this in terms of the news angle. Kellyanne, we'll send it back to you at this point.
Thank you, Todd and Katie. Yeah, so right now I do want to mention that this is in effect until 10:45, and the towns that are set to get hit next, so that's within the next 5 minutes, is as we move out towards Southborough, Northborough, and also Hopkinton area. So until 10:45, that's where that tornado warning is in effect until, and you guys are set to get hit next. So you need to take shelter right now. But I also am going to progress this out eastward. So this is not an area, this new cone that I've drawn here, this is not an area of tornado warning. This is just the track that the tornado warned area is going to follow. So what does that mean? That means if you're within this cone that I've drawn, that means that there's a high likelihood of rotation and possibly even damaging wind pushing into your area. So you're not currently in the tornado warning, but these areas will likely see this storm system pushing north and eastward toward them. So that includes the town of Weston moving out toward Westboro, as I mentioned, between 10:45 to 10:50. Somerville, just around noon, you'll start to see that pushing in. This also means that right along 95, we are seeing this very strong area of thunderstorms pushing through right along 95 as we move between the 11 o'clock to noon hour. So that is when we're going to see very low visibility. Speaking of visibility, real quick, I do want to show just how quickly the visibility lowers as the system pushes through. Right now in Norwood, visibility up to 10 miles. You move just westward into Worcester, it's down to just over a mile. So that is a strong indication of where we're seeing the worst of this system. And keep in mind, we do have flash flood warnings in effect, and so we're seeing very low visibility with these heavy downpours pushing through. Some indication of weak rotation still on the radar. However, the National Weather Service has not extended the area of the tornado warning. That is a good indication, but as a reminder, if you're anywhere within this northeast track, it's moving right its way into Westboro within the next few minutes, moving out towards Somerville eventually as we approach noon. You need to be weather aware. Although it's not a tornado warning, there's a high likelihood of damaging wind. We're also getting a lot of reports of debris being blown around, and with such low visibility, that is something that is difficult to see. Now, I believe we still have Mike Wonkum on the phone, and I know you have a lot of insight. Mike, you were here with the tornado warnings that we had yesterday. How does this compare to what we were seeing yesterday with that system?
Well, yesterday, as you noted on the velocity scan there, that we were seeing very weak rotation. You've had actually a lot more this morning showing up on radar than what we had even yesterday. And yesterday we had some damage primarily up into New Hampshire, up in the Lakes region. You know, I want to bring back what Josh was talking about earlier with the traffic. We have a tremendous amount of traffic on a Saturday morning, and people are going to events. They may be headed to the Cape, they may be headed to the Lakes region, they may be going on to do whatever they do on the weekends, but there's a tremendous amount of traffic on the roads. And even if you don't have a tornado cutting through, torrential downpours, lightning, all of those things going on. If you have plans today, you might want to wait with them just a little bit. As you were mentioning, that tracking puts it into Somerville around noon. So we're talking about Boston right around the lunchtime hour. And if that's taking place and you have a torrential amount of rain, you know what happens during the week with traffic. And the traffic on the weekend is just as bad, if not worse today. And that's why I would say delay your plans, you know, in the eastern part of the state. Just kind of delay it till this afternoon. We'll let things settle back just a little bit, especially as we can see where these tornadoes go. And it's interesting, too, to look back on the fact that we have had so many morning tornadoes. You know, it's unprecedented. We typically think of tornadoes as occurring during the afternoon, but I'm thinking back to Concord, where we had that tornado. That was an early morning one. We had the Revere tornado, and you were talking about them being rain-wrapped. That was a classic example of that in Revere. People are going, there's a tremendous amount of wind, but it was wrapped in rain so much you really never could actually see a funnel cloud. So many times we're in areas, especially areas that are wooded like that, you're going to be not be able to see that rotation going on, even though you may hear it before you actually see what's happening. How are things looking right now on radar, Kellyanne?
We still have a flash flood warning. Oh, Sorry about that. So we are now seeing the tornado warning has been let to expire. Extremely good news. And at this point, it's because the National Weather Service is not seeing any strong indication of rotation. Very good. However, still need to be unaware and as far as the weather, because we still have a flash flood warning that's in effect. And that's a very large area that's included in that. It's this area of green. And that does stretch from southern Worcester County all the way northward, Leominster, right out into Acton. That is where we're seeing the flash flood warning. That is in effect until 12:30, and that is where we could see rainfall rates of 1 to 2 inches. And as we all know, flash flooding can cause just as much damage, unfortunately, and that's something that will linger as far as an impact through this afternoon. Katie and Todd.
Okay, Kellyanne, thank you very much. So again, just to recap, the tornado warning has expired. There has been some damage, but we don't expect more damage from tornadoes, at least not immediately.
Right. We're going to keep an eye on this storm as it moves through. We are here all day. We will be breaking in with coverage if we need to, if more warnings come into play here.
But it'll be hot, but it'll be a dry heat. Temps tomorrow close to 90, but the dew points will come down. The dew points tomorrow will be in the low to mid 60s. And they'll stay there, I think, for Monday and Tuesday. So those will be hot days, but there won't be quite as much humidity than what we're seeing right now or yesterday. And also, too, I mean, even the days where the dew points are around 70, if you don't have a weather system moving through, then
there's no threat.
There's no threat. Yeah, there wouldn't be anything to trigger it.
What makes a storm so early develop this strong? Normally we see them in the afternoon where they're strong and 4, 3 o'clock. How come at 10 o'clock or earlier this morning are these strong storms? Is it just how the atmosphere is set up this morning?
It goes back to that humidity, that moist air, that humid air. You know, humid air is much more light. It's buoyant, and warm humid air is buoyant, and so it can rise easier than dry air and cool air. So if you have a really muggy, humid day or a humid air mass in New England, and really anywhere, but for our purposes, New England, and you have low pressure that moves across the region, well, that low pressure has just enough wind that it gets the air kind of piling in on itself. You know, that's how the atmosphere works. With low pressure, air comes in, and then high pressure air spreads out. So tomorrow will be high pressure. Air will be spreading out. You'll have lots of sunshine. But right now, you have a couple of areas of low pressure. So as these low pressures move through, the air piles on itself. It converges. You know, basically like all the roads in Boston do. So just use that analogy there, where all the roads are coming in as one. So that's air piling in on itself, and then that's forced to rise. And so the rising air, because it's muggy, rises real easily. And when you have rising air interacting with just enough wind, then you can get the air rotating and spinning. You can call them spin-up tornadoes because they can just kind of, they don't form from top down like the classic tornadoes like Springfield 2011. They're more of a, you know, it's kind of a, you have the air rising and then the air up in the cloud kind of descending a little bit, and you make the connection, which is what happened in Revere and likely happened in Upton and Douglas a couple of weeks ago, and possibly, again, happened this morning in Dudley, in Webster.
All right, JR, thanks. We want to take just a couple of quick looks at some of the pictures that we've been seeing now from our viewers. This is from Main Street in Webster. You can see it looks like the roof ripped off of the building there. You can see all the water on the ground as well. We do know that the National Weather Service says they're going to be sending crews out there to assess the damage. This also was in from a viewer. She said she lives right on the Webster-Dudley line. She sent in those photos just after 10 o'clock this morning, and that viewer telling us that when the storm came through, it sounded like a train. She said it sounded like a train just came through, and you can see all the damage there with the trees down. And also, if you take a look sort of behind all the greenery, you see the trunks of the trees. It looks like it was just split, not necessarily ripped from the roots like we see when we have those powerful storms when the ground is just saturated and the trees topple over. This looks more like the winds where the trees are sort of just split in half. So again, as more viewer photos and videos come in, we're going to make sure that we continue to monitor the storm system throughout the rest of the day. Right now, you can see there's a flash flood warning in effect now for parts of Worcester, Norfolk, and Middlesex County. That's lasting until 12:30.
So the pictures continue to come in from Webster and other areas that were under this tornado warning earlier today. The NWS is sending out meteorologists at this hour to these areas. They will look at the damage, specifically how the trees fell and how the trees look, to determine if it is exactly a tornado that hit this area. They will also look at the damage, such as there from Webster, to determine whether or not what we saw on the radar did in fact become a tornado. Obviously, this is a severe line of storms. We have all of our meteorologists in, and we are going to be watching these storms throughout the afternoon.
That's right. The warning expired at 10:45 just about a half an hour ago. Right now, there is no tornado warning issued for any part of Massachusetts, but again, the potential could be there. Our team of meteorologists will be tracking it. We're also sending our crews out to Webster and Dudley, those areas that it appears were